Okay, so ready to start the meeting?
You ready? Go.
Okay. First on the agenda, general business and citizen queries. I assume, given the fact that we have a packed house in front of us, that we're going to have lots of public comment. So moving on, a couple of things that maybe I should report on. First of all, Roy and I were at the Selectmen's Meeting last night, and the Selectmen decided to form two committees. The first committee will study potential improvements to the town center. They heard a presentation from the gas company. The gas company wants to replace the gas lines in town center, and the Selectmen, correct me if your understanding is different, Roy, decided to postpone the replacement until next year.
I think that's my understanding too.
And so the new committee would investigate utilities in route in the post road. They would investigate burying the electrical and telephone lines in town center up to Linwood.
Did you say burying or burying?
Burying.
Burying.
Putting them underground. We're changing the lighting fixtures and generally sprucing up town center. So the committee would consist of somebody from the Selectmen, some business owners, planning board, traffic and sidewalk committee, and maybe a couple of at-large members. So they're going to be looking for the planning board representative for that committee, and for about 2 years now, Steve, you've been suggesting that such a committee be formed.
Maybe more like 5.
So you would seem to be natural.
I will volunteer.
Oh, good. It's going.
Good. Okay, that's the first committee. The second committee would deal with integration and coordination and cooperation among town boards and committees and town staff to deal with issues that we have been trying to reach consensus on with respect to reasonable policies that predict that people who are applying for permits and that sort of thing could expect to encounter when they come to town hall, how the committees could work together to make it clearer what people are expected to do, so that we could avoid things like the non-conforming replacement construction ping pong that some people have gotten into back and forth to the zoning board of appeals, and also, frankly, some issues that individual committees themselves can't really address. Like, for example, the current review of the Ogilvie's proposal, which is on our plate, and the upcoming review of the Warren Avenue proposal for affordable housing, which would be a comprehensive permit. We have to look at those as though they're completely separate, and yet they're totally integrated. And then there are other boards as well that are looking at just one of those things, and some that are looking at both of them. And so, the question is, how do we make that into a rational process? So they want to start by having an informal session among probably the chairman of a few boards, like the planning board, the ZBA, the Concom, Historical Commission, Board of Selectmen, and staff, such as the building inspector, town planner, town manager, and see if we can begin to set up some sort of a methodology for meeting and having these kinds of policy discussions. So that's going to happen later in June, and we'll see where it goes.
Sounds good, actually.
Yeah, I think it's, both of them are good.
Well,
things.
I must say, I've also long been in favor of getting rid of power lines and getting the stuff, there's got to be a better solution and to those. My only concern is that, we look at it in a broader brush than just the town center, just the postcard, because it'll be public monies that will be, from everybody's tax base, and everybody should enjoy the benefits of that beautification, including how it improves their property value. So that's my only thought about it at this time.
Are you talking about the kinds of things that the committee would look at, or?
Well, for instance, burying the power lines, for instance, is a beautification project that improves people's, property values. And if there's town money, public money being spent on that, I'd like to see a broader brush than just the postcard center, so to speak.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, are you
When
talking
say
about
a
very
broader
broad
area,
area?
Just broader extent of area.
So you wouldn't stop it at Linwood, you would go
No.
on, or?
No, and I might go up Church Street, I might go on
Oh.
North Street, I might go, down Newton Street. I mean, I would want to see it, and maybe it's a phased project. I wouldn't expect to do it all in one day, or 1 year, one fiscal year. But maybe it should be a phased project. But let's look at it in that way so that everybody in town who's going to be paying for it gets to reap the benefits as well.
Right. Well,
That just seems fair to me.
one of the things we
Except if
talked
you're going
about.
to say something like that, then you're talking about doing the entire town, because the entire
Sure.
town pays taxes.
Yep.
So how can the town afford to do that?
In a phased manner.
I think it's a tad ambitious.
What we talked about last night was starting small.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing how it worked,
Mm-hmm.
expanding the scope if it seemed reasonable. Because there are going to be all kinds of pressures to make it into something global. And
It means that nothing will happen. When
Well, that's
it gets to
what
that
worries
point,
me.
That's what it'll be. because
One
it will
one of the
never
other
happen.
things that was discussed was the impact to traffic. As you know, phasing on something like this is an incredibly critical issue because the roads are beyond capacity.
Right.
And how that's done is going to be really important. Business owners expressed their concern and even talked about the possibility of night construction just to get it done faster. Whether that's something that's possible. Yeah. So there's,
Yeah.
there's
So
a
it's
lot
really
of
early stages here in the discussion.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
variables that
Yeah.
have to be considered for sure.
Yeah.
right, everybody sees the final. They can see in their head a picture of the
You
final
see that
result.
postcard David's talking about?
Right. Norman Rockwell.
Or
painting
more
the-
than just one
Right.
postcard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not the whole town, huh?
Ultimately.
Yeah.
I think given the amount of generators people are putting in, it'd be interesting to look at the analysis between actually putting in a generator and bringing in everything underground. Doing stuff underground, but
Yeah.
Can we go back to the issue though of boards working together? Because Betsy, did I hear you say that in Winchester, when site plan review was a prerequisite for a special permit, that your experience was that the planning board issued a recommendation or not about the project? Did I hear that right?
I actually, as a result of the discussion last night, I had a fairly lengthy discussion with Donna. And I have a number of ideas on how it could work.
Okay.
And I have made some suggestions, and she has asked me to start pursuing them in office. What you're referring to is that Mass General Law basically has a provision that says if the zoning, this board can make recommendations to the zoning board of appeals on all their cases. So when I worked in Winchester, the planning board religiously made recommendations on various cases, be they variance or special permit, to the ZBA. Sometimes the ZBA totally ignored them, and for the most part, I think pretty much abided by what the planning board recommended. So, that's something, that's one of the things that this board could do to increase communications.
And I'm also curious about if there was, if the zoning board decided differently than the planning board's recommendation, did they cite the reason, the rationale in their decision?
Yep. That was specific in the bylaw.
That's good.
So,
So when do you think you'd be giving that to Donna? I mean, just roughly.
I
2
probably,
weeks?
I want to talk with a couple of people,
Yeah.
but probably within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Because it would be
she
interesting.
acknowledges that there are some things that just aren't working right. And,
That's the
So-
first step.
yep,
Yeah,
so, and she's been very supportive of a number of things that we've talked about. So.
yeah, good. It would be good maybe to have that as something that we could
You can
talk about
Start off.
at that
the
start, at
launch
the
point,
kickoff
yeah.
meeting. So I think Ed Coburn talked about doing it like the last week in June. June 24th sticks in my head. I don't know what day of the week that is.
Tuesday.
Tuesday? Yeah. So if you could shoot for that one, that would be terrific. Sometime, before the 24th would be good. And I think Michael Harity's going to be the selectman, the point man for the selectmen. So. And I think Ed Coburn's going to be the point man for the selectmen on the town center improvement committee. Good.
Are you looking for someone from this board to be on the coordination committee, or is that?
Well, let's see
mostly
what happens at the
daytime?
kickoff.
Because most of the staff are, of course, daytime employees, except for you.
And nighttime.
Daytime, nighttime, all the time.
Do you have a cot yet?
That's not funny, this is only week 4. That is not funny.
Do not scare our new planner away.
I don't think anything scares you, that's
Would be
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, but logic.
All right, good.